And starting the webinar. You guys can start whenever you're ready.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. We're just going to wait for 30 seconds or so whilst people come on into the webinar today. But welcome, whether you're joining us live or on demand, as folks will be joining both before for this live session and also on demand afterwards as well. So today we're going to be discussing real-time virtual telescopes transforming university learning. And it's an honor to have with us today Professor Dr. Björn Poppe from the Division of Radiation Physics and Space Environment at the University of Oldenburg. And we'll be going to have a fireside chat between Björn and Paul Cox, Slooh's Chief Astronomical Officer. So with no further ado, I shall pass over to Paul, who'll give a quick intro to Slooh.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning or this evening, wherever you are. Slooh, if you haven't heard about us, we are an online space and earth science platform where students use our research-grade telescopes in Chile, Australia, and our flagship observatory at the Institute of Astrophysics of the Canary Islands. But they also now use orbiting Earth observation satellites to study Earth science as well. Now, I'm going to give you a very lightning tour of the platform if you haven't seen it before we talk to Professor Poppe. So this is, I'm logged in as a normal education user, and this is our platform. This is what we call our dashboard, and we're not going to go into very much detail here at all, because we're going to learn a lot more by talking to Björn. But this is the dashboard, and you can see it's got everything that we want on here. We've got the telescopes, we've got our satellites, we've got our Quest learning activities. We'll talk about those a little bit more. Community areas, workspaces are where you and your students communicate and discuss your use of Slooh. They also share what are called observations, and we've got hundreds of guides and things like that. But I talked about workspaces and sharing observations. I think it's a good time to maybe show you what some of the students at universities have been using Slooh's telescopes for. Because don't forget, we go all the way from elementary all the way to university and higher education. So we can see students here creating light curves. This is a particular one of R.I. Lyrae stars. We actually had one 12-year-old student, believably, wrote a scientific paper doing just that over the course of a year. We've got another one here measuring parallax. This is the joy of having multiple observatories. So they captured an asteroid, near-Earth asteroid from Chile and in the Canary Islands, and actually they landed up measuring parallax and the distance, calculating the distance of a star and those near-Earth asteroids. But here we are. This is platform. Back to the dashboard, and I just want to scroll down here really quickly. So here we've got observations, and everything on Slooh is gamified. We're going to hear from how successful that is, even at university level, from Björn. And everything that students do on Slooh earn them what are called gravity points. And it really is very important, even at university, because it really engages students. So we've got observations, which are images students share with the rest of the community. We've got our workspaces, those private areas for you and your students, but we also have community workspaces as well, some of them specialists. So this one is for variable star photometry. Here are our telescopes. So we've got the Chile Observatory is online at the moment. You can see here. We've got the Canary Islands telescope and obviously the Australian Observatory, which is online in 3.5 hours time. So we've now got basically 24-hour live telescope views. Canary Islands, we also have a specialist solar telescope there. Missions, we're not going to delve into that because there's an awful lot that you can see at www.slooh.com. But a mission is a 5 or 10 minute period of time where one of your students is selecting the target basically for one of the telescopes, and they can watch it live. All students can watch all of the live telescope feeds. They can also join other people's missions, but all of their data including our real-time process PNGs, which we have a patent for, but also the FITS data are available and saved automatically for your students. So they come in the morning and all of their data from the Chile Observatory is there waiting for them. So you can see our past missions, these are our quest learning activities, and of course all of the photos. And you can see here, these are some of the ones that have been captured from our Earth orbiting satellites, which is quite exciting because that only launched a couple of weeks ago. I'm not going to delve very much now into the platform, but I will show you two things. I'm going to show you what a quest looks like. This is one of our learning activities. And you can see here, we've got teacher resources that you can download, but most quests are designed in roughly the same format. They're split down into different parts and different steps. The difference with our learning activities is that they all require your students to capture and acquire their own data. This is not some online virtual thing. And that's a really important learning exercise, because basically when they're controlling our mountaintop telescopes, they're working in exactly the same way as professional astronomers do now. But the quests are interactive. They collect their data within the quest, and then they produce things like this at the end of it with their data from those quests. But I just want to show you one other thing before we jump into the fireside chat. I want to show you how to schedule the telescopes. So I just hit the button there. You can see telescopes at the moment. So Chile 1, Chile 2, Canary 1, Canary 3, 4 are online. Actually, one's offline because of high winds. But we'll go off to schedule missions. And this particular method is just a 3-step process, and your students can still use that, but that's primarily used for school grades. But when we hop over here, your students can also schedule by catalogue and by telescope. Now, if they go to by telescope, they have far more granular control of what they're doing. So we can select maybe the Australia 1 telescope. They can schedule their missions up to 7 days in advance. And if we have a look at the telescope availability, this is going to be Australia in 3.5 hours time. So we can see there's an awful lot scheduled there, but I suspect if we go down here, there are free slots here, and your students can click on any one of these slots. And then they have a variety of methods as well. The most advanced way is by coordinates. They'll enter the coordinates of their target. And because this is an advanced mission for university students, they can also select what's called the image processing option. And what we've got in there, we've got tables that you can look at on the website. You can see what all of these actually do, the processing options, and it basically changes the binning level, the exposure level, the type of filters which are used for their particular mission to gather all of their data. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that now, because there is loads of information that you can see on the website, and more detailed demos and things like that, and talk to Glenn or Jimmy and they can sort you out with a more detailed demo if you want. But now I think we should get straight into our fireside chat, and we're delighted to welcome our most successful educator using Slooh at university level, Professor Björn Poppe at the University of Oldenburg. Good morning, Björn. How are you?
Good morning, Paul. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the nice compliment. I haven't known that we are the most successful users there, but so thanks for inviting me to talk a bit about our experiences.
Thank you very much. Well, let's get straight into it. How long has Oldenburg been using Slooh?
Actually, we've been using Slooh since 2015, so a little bit before, or some years before, Slooh's learning environment really became active then. And I have to say, we have now dedicated astronomy program in Oldenburg, but the astronomy is integrated into our physics and engineering departments as a kind of subject of specialization. And especially the lecture we like to talk today about is it's integrated into a program which is called professionalization program. And this is something like a general education program in German universities. The idea is that we like to encourage interdisciplinary learning and soft skill development of the students. So we try to help the students to look a little bit or think a little bit outside the box. So the idea is that we open the lectures for students from other faculties, not just only from the physics faculty. And then in 2018, we've been asked whether we would be able to open our introduction to astronomy lecture into a cross-faculty general education course. And of course, really had initial doubts because we had to expect a really mixed experience level of the students. Anyhow, we designed a course with focus on skill of where we focus on the skills and like of a kind of adapted learning opportunity according to their skill, and with a really strong focus on observations. And that was exactly the time when Slooh changed its learning environment, and we thought, oh, that might be a really good option for us. And since then, it really blew our mind away. We started with 10 students, and then during the last semesters, we usually had around 250 to 300 students from different faculties. Of course, a lot of STEM students, but then also from humanities, medicine. We even had students from housekeeping, I have to say. But
Wow.
you know, astronomy is interesting for everyone. So we are quite baffled by this, I have to say. And this semester, we broke a new record. We have now, I just checked it in the morning, 369 students in the lecture. So we really have problems finding rooms at the university to host them all. Of course, this is only possible because we have a really enthusiastic team to whom I'm very grateful, just have to say it here. So we usually have 4 to 6 faculty instructors giving the lectures and then 6 student tutors, I have to say.
Yeah, I've worked with your team, and what an awesome group they are as well. I wish I had teachers like that when I was school and university. But anyway, what challenges, Bjorn, were you facing before you discovered Slooh back then?
Yeah, I mean, for us in Oldenburg, of course, one of the big challenges is the, let's say, mostly cloudy weather that we have here.
Mm.
And we are far in the north, so we have not very long summer nights and longer winter nights, but the weather is usually bad in the winter nights. So, of course, observation time is a big challenge, but then that was, of course, directly solved by Slooh, more or less, or mostly. But the biggest challenge concerning the lecture is, of course, the huge difference in the students' knowledge. We have a lot of students there, especially from other faculties, and they have deselected physics in school as early as possible. And I don't know how is it in the other countries, but in Germany, many students or pupils are afraid of physics. So that's a little bit difficult to say. This is a really big challenge. So we have a group where some of them really have trouble to understand the basic laws, like Newton's gravity laws or whatever, while our physics students, of course, have sometimes already studied quantum mechanics or even general relativity. So this was a really big challenge. So to offer all these students a lecture that keeps them interested and engaged and gives them also the chance to learn more about the universe according to their skill level. And that was wonderfully solved by the Slooh offer, so to say, I have to say. And then the next challenge is, of course, how you grade so many students with all these different knowledge levels. You couldn't write an exam. It's difficult to correct 200 or 300 exams anyhow, but if they then are on different levels, you can forget about this, in our opinion. So also there, Slooh could help us a lot because it has these gravity points where we may talk a little bit later about. And for the students, especially the easy programming of the telescopes, as you've just shown, is really interesting and really important because this enables them to do their own observations, which is a really good thing, in our opinion.
Yeah.
And at least as important is the learning environment, which enables the curiosity-driven experience, so to say, that they have. And this can really be used independent of their prior knowledge. So that's also a good thing for us.
Yeah, and I think I think you were talking about scheduling the telescopes and how easy it is, and that huge variety of expertise, skill levels, and interests that students have. You know, they can work their way through the platform and develop their interest and how they use the telescopes as well. So, how do you actually use Slooh in your intro lecture?
So the lecture itself, it's a classical lecture. So we have 2 hours lecture per week, and then we have a 2-hour seminar, and this then goes over 2 semesters. And basically, we cover a classical astronomical curriculum, so with objects in the solar system, in the Milky Way, then galaxies, cosmology, whatever there is. And we have a kind of, well, 2-level adaptation there. So we do a kind of lecture, let's say, on a more like outreach level, where we just cover the basic phenomenological science stuff. And this is then for all the students, of course. And then we have a more in-depth presentation for our physics students, which is happening in the same lecture as the other ones as well. But we let all students know right from the beginning that they are welcome to follow the derivation of the physical laws. But if they don't make it, it's absolutely no problem. So They do not have to follow them. And actually, a lot of students try to follow, which is also a nice success in our opinion. Then the seminars, they are for Q&A, of course, and hands-on learning. There, especially, we show them Slooh. We discuss problems with Slooh. If they have some, usually there is not too much problems that they have. But of course, there are some questions where to find something and so on. And then we also train some basic techniques like astrophotography, or we show them how to do photometry, exoplanet transits measurement, and so on. So it's a classical, let's say, we show them how to do it. And then Slooh comes into play because the students all get their own accounts, and they use Slooh, are active for Slooh to get a huge part of their grade. So the students earn gravity points by observing, taking quizzes, and submitting observations, and all this to their own levels and experience. So we just let them run, so to say. And they need a certain number of gravity points to pass, and they need a number of certain number of gravity points to get an A, let's say. And there are a lot of students who already have this A, so the highest grade, and they just continue to work and use Slooh because they are so interested in it. And last year, we had a really nice success, but I haven't realized it actually because you just told us this. Our students earned for the first time more than 1 million gravity points.
Yeah.
That was a really nice success, so to say. And then at the end of the lecture, we make a huge poster session where every student is supposed to create their own poster. And so we have, as we have so many students, we make different tracks and we play like a small conference. And the posters usually also include self-taken images by Slooh, and they have to work a little bit on it with astrophotography techniques, and also give a small presentation of the scientific context of this object. Then, so this is how Slooh is integrated. So we basically use it for many things in the lecture, I would say.
It's been interesting actually to see some of your students, and yes, they're doing the scientific research projects, but some of the astrophotography that your students have produced has been absolutely out of this world. And that shows that extra level of engagement where they're not having to do that, they're choosing to do that. So how do you drive student engagement on the platform, including some of that gamification? Because a lot of professors will hear gamification on a platform. I did, when we first introduced it and thought, oh, really? But actually, it's been an absolute driver of success for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this gamification, of course, for us, it makes it a little bit convenient to grade the students, I have honestly to say, because they just get their grades, but then they also know if they get the points that they directly know which grade they have, so to say. And at the end, if they have so much experience that they have reached this, let's say, top level A grade or whatever, then they are so much used to Slooh that it's absolutely no problem to do anything. I mean, I have a lot of students just using Slooh on their smartphone, and then, okay, now there's a free slot, I book it and whatever. So that's really nice. But I think for the engagement, what's also really important is that it's a kind of well-prepared learning environment for each student, and it's tailored to their level. So the students can take pictures, they can exchange ideas, as you said, in the workspaces. And for us, and also for the learning success, they can take quizzes on their own level, so to say, without the fear of exposing their lack of knowledge to other students. That is something that is also quite important in my opinion. So that means that every student can really work on the material that they're on their level without the feeling overwhelmed, and can develop their skills, so to say, at their own speed. And if someone who dropped out physics as early as possible then starts with an elementary course quiz, well, why not? It's okay. They get their gravity points for this as well. And if the STEM student goes straight to the college level, it's just as great, at least in terms of grading them, so to say. And that is where the gravity points come into play, because both services are rewarded with gravity points. This is an ideal tool for customized learning, in our opinion. And of course, it's quite practical as well. So in my opinion, the most important thing is that every student learns at their own speed and experiences the fascinating of their own observation, and that drives, of course, the natural curiosity, in our opinion. And I think this is anyhow a big part of Slooh's idea, so it's just added perfectly to our intentions. But we're not just leaving them alone. We also have our workspace, as you just already mentioned. And we have usually one tutor who is responsible to keep this workspace running, to motivate the students to share observations, to remind them on cool stuff that might happen during this night, some constellations that might be interesting to see, and so on. And of course, we're also pushing them a bit at the beginning to show their observations on the platform, especially when it comes to the public observation, so to say, where everyone can give comments on the observations of anyone on the Slooh homepage. So basically, I think at the end, it's then again with all the cool stuff in the world, it makes much more fun if you can share it with others and if you can discuss it with others.
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe during the Q&A, if we do have some time, we will go into a workspace because we've mentioned it several times now, and we can have a quick look at that. But where else are University of Oldenburg currently using Slooh? In which courses and other activities?
Yeah, as I said, this was initially we used it as a really addition to our telescope education, I have to say. And then this learning environment was added, and then we used it for this intro course. Basically, probably like at all universities, we follow a step-by-step approach here to help our students to develop the skills. That means we start with a traditional introductory lecture. We just talked about this before. And then we move to a more advanced lab. So we have used Slooh for a new astrometry lab since 2016. And we'll also added some photometry options for the more advanced students now, where we use it for photometry. And then this observational education is usually being finished with a week trip to a partner observatory in France, so above Nice, above the French Alps, where they can use 1-meter telescopes. And of course, also for the bachelor master thesis, the students work here on scientific topics. Our main topics are meteor science, near Earth object follow-ups, and also high energy radiation or even instrumentation. And sometimes it's a little bit hard to explain how Slooh is used in detail there, but it's more like a key part of almost everything we do, because we have this observation available. We can take the pictures. That means we can maybe also prepare our own measurements at other observatories. We can take test images. We can do even scientific valuable measurements that I've just mentioned before with the new observations. So basically, one can say that Slooh gives us the option to decouple the observation a bit from the instrumentation part. We also have like 8 to 10 remote controllable telescopes here in Oldenburg and around our university, where the students can learn instrumentation, but usually the weather here is not so stable that you really can plan observations. And there, Slooh is a really valuable extension, in my opinion. So we have independent options to train the students. We can streamline the education a little bit. So that's really an option where Slooh really comes into play. And we also use, so that it's, so to say, for the education of the students. And we also use Slooh for observatory tours. We have, at the university, we have an observatory, and we have a mobile observatory which goes around in northern Germany to show the people the beauty of the night sky. And then we have a group of very motivated colleagues and students which are offering these tours. And we have 4 to 6 tours per month, which are usually completely booked out at the moment. Might be that we have a saturation in some years, but at the moment they are really well booked. And again, since the weather often doesn't allow real observations, we can, during these tours, just show Slooh and also can just broadcast, so to say, live observations for the audience, which is also a quite nice thing. And then we also regularly use School for our school internships, because we have a lot of pupils from school or students from school who come to the university to make a first internship, also to decide then maybe later on a program that they like to join. And this is something where we directly give them a Slooh account to have like 14 days of experience as a real, let's say, observer or astronomer. And in fact, we have some quite successful students. So we have a lot of students coming to us after this internship, studying then at the University of Oldenburg. We have one who is now just finished, and he wrote out of his master's thesis. He was a co-author in a science paper of the JWST. So, and he started Slooh. He was a really well supporter of Slooh in our group, I have to say. Other student is working as a working group leader at the University of Bremen at the microgravity drop tower. I don't know if you know this, as Bremen is one of the most important space industry cities in Europe. So we have a quite good connection also, so to say, into the, let's say, environment at this camp. So again, we do not use Slooh for this or that, but it's just a major and integral part of our education.
And you're right. So many universities now have their own telescopes, but how much do they actually get used? You need people who know how to use them. You have to have the weather right, and so many faculty as well suffer from light pollution. So we do hear a lot from the telescopes that are on site are very good for that hands-on experience, but their actual use, it's way easier using 24-hour telescopes on top of volcanoes and mountains around the world. So we've heard how long you've already been using Slooh for, and we were delighted, Bjorn, when University of Oldenburg signed a new deal with us for the next 5 years. Now, this has opened up new partnership opportunities for both of us. Can you tell us about some of those?
Yeah, of course. Maybe one sentence to your last comment on the usage of the telescopes. I mean, there's this old proverb: the best telescope or the most valuable telescope is the one you regularly use. And I think for this, I have to say that in the sense, Slooh is our best telescope, actually, but just came in my mind. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so yes, this new partnership is a really fascinating development also for our side, of course, because we hope that we can even develop more advanced lab projects for our education of the students. And of course, we might also be able to make this available to other colleagues and universities as well. Personally, one of my favorite projects, at least in terms of education, would be to be involved in a group of university teachers, maybe worldwide, which like to develop a kind of core curriculum of advanced astronomy using Slooh, because I'm completely convinced that this is possible and that there's even more potential for university education than it's used so far. So that might be our goal, to help here a little bit. On the national level, I hope that we can support Slooh a bit to offer an easy and accessible and fascinating view of our universe. And on our regional level, especially when we talk about collaboration with schools, we like to strengthen our, let's say, school groups, where we invite then interested students from school to be connected to our university as early as possible. And maybe then later on, we can also direct them into the physics programs or engineering programs. And of course, quite interesting and very exciting opportunity is that now 2 of our most advanced students might and want and hopefully will join you on a maintenance trip to Tenerife then, to learn a little bit more. So again, there are so many options, in my opinion, and I really hope that there are many more years of our cooperations in front of us.
Absolutely. And I think, frankly, we've only scratched the surface as far as some of those opportunities are concerned. Just before we go to Q&A, Bjorn, I think we've answered quite a bit of this already, but can you just kind of give us a summary? What has been the impact to the faculty, and how has Slooh made teaching more seamless for you?
I mean, the impact for our division is, I hope it's quite clear, in my opinion, or I hope I have explained it a bit. It's the most important tool to do everything that is somehow related to astronomy, to prepare everything, to have an easy hands-on tool to check things out. For the faculty, I really have to say that by using these learning opportunities that Slooh is offering now, and by using this to create this cross-faculty course, we have really created, I would say, the biggest lecture in this whole program of this professionalization area, because there's no professionalization lecture at the whole university where more than 300 students are going to. And this is for a physics lecture, I have to say, this is quite a success. And I heard this from many colleagues, so that it's really astonishing that we were able to do this. And of course, the students, if they do their evaluations, Slooh is regularly really on the top list. So there are so many students that thank us that we give them the option to use Slooh, that they would never have thought about getting really great data and images from the universe on their own on such an easy level, and so on. So it's a really, really, helpful tool for us, I have to say.
Thank you very much, Bjorn. And I must say that it's been absolutely wonderful to watch the progression of the University of Oldenburg's use of our platform, over these years, and seeing also some of your individual students and the way their use has just got more and more expert and more advanced. But I think it's time that we hop over to any questions. So please, anybody who's here, feel free to ask a question in either chat or Q&A. And I know Glenn and Jimmy, you've already had some questions coming in from registrants, so feel free to pass those in as well. Has anybody got any questions for us?
Absolutely. So let's kick off with some of the questions that we've already got. And as Paul said, please do use either the Q&A section or the webinar chat to enter any questions that you have right now. But just to start with, so these come out throughout the session. Does Slooh align with global astronomy curriculums? Obviously, we've spoken from University of Oldenburg's perspective, but we've got people joining from around the world. How does Slooh align with global curriculums for astronomy?
Yes, it does. And that's all the way through from kindergarten, in fact, through elementary, middle school, high school, higher ed, and of course, we've got university level as well. We are also at the moment, Glenn, we discussed this, it's quite important, I think, in your part of the world, IB and the IB astronomy and earth science curriculum. And there's more detail on the website about the curricula and also the standards alignments as well. And as you saw, I think in the quest that I shared here, in here, when you go into a quest, and actually some of our quests are available at www.slooh.com, so you can actually take a little look at this. But you can see here we've got the objectives of a quest, but we've also got the standards addressed as well. So here you can see some of those alignments, especially with NGSS.
Brilliant. And to that same vein, actually, we were just looking on the screen there and said gravity points. One of the questions, as Dr. Poppe was speaking about gravity points, was how do they actually work? And more specifically, how do I view them at an individual and a class level to measure attainment?
That's a great question. So here we are. We'll hop over to the workspaces. So gravity points, as a reminder, is Slooh's currency. Everything that your students do on Slooh earn them gravity points, whether or not that's scheduling a telescope mission, but they also get more gravity points if somebody joins their mission. When they share an image as an observation, they earn gravity points. If somebody replies or likes to that, if they're building engagement, gravity points are really about building engagement with the rest of the community and collaboration as well. But if we hopped into, this is a typical workspace for students, and we can see here we've got quest assignments, because within the platform you can assign specific quests to your students, and we'll ask Björn in a minute how he uses that, because I believe they may assign some quests but then say to students, do another few as well. These are observations that we talked about. So every time a student has shared one of these, this is from the solar telescope here. You can see a couple of animations of the lunar eclipse a couple of weeks ago, and then we've got another animation here. And we actually have an animation tool within the Quest learning activity, which is not often used for the sun like this, but more often for transient phenomena, or maybe discovering Pluto in one of our history quests. But you can see here that as soon as somebody likes an observation, you've earned gravity points and replying and stuff like that. But we've also got our discussion area. So Björn said that he's using this quite a lot to discuss their work, to maybe point out to students different celestial events that are occurring. So this is a great private area for your students to work in. But going back to your question, so I will just show you here, this is where an educator is actually tracking and monitoring student activity. A student doesn't see this level of detail, but here we can see the gravity points that each one has earned, and there are a whole bundle of levels named after famous astronomers from around the world, and each level accruing gravity points gets you to one of those. We can also see how many quests have been completed, how many quests are in progress for those, but then we've got the leaderboard. And I think without question, our most successful educators using the platform at any grade level have their students focus on this. And this is the student and school leaderboard, and you can see University of Oldenburg here. It's currently number 5, Bjorn, because you've just changed courses, so you were top of the league table this time last week.
Yeah, right.
And then suddenly you've got a new cohort of students, but it's still a pretty good start.
Yeah, but I'm wondering why they already have 200,000 gravity points, because they just started last week.
Exactly. Well, they're University of Oldenburg students, so we know how good they are. So that just gives you a very brief overview. But Bjorn, maybe you can expand on that answer a little.
Yeah, right. So the student get gravity points for nearly everything they do, starting from booking missions, from commenting missions to discussing missions, of course. Yes, we started with we just let them go. So we also do not try to find any kind of quests which are related to our curriculum, because we just say, okay, you are curious, go there and try to find out what you like. We realized that some students would like to have some guidance, which kind of quests are good for them to take. And I know there are some kinds of lists where it's described what kind of, you already showed this a little bit, where you can choose the level you like to have. So students who have no experience with physics, they go maybe at the beginning to elementary school, and so on and so on. So there you can get a nice overview about the quizzes. And still now we just give them some suggestions to take quizzes. So we do not double check whether they have done quizzes, but what we do, or certain quizzes, but what we do if we check the results from time to time, because there are parts in the quizzes where the students also have to punch in a free text, which is quite nice to recap everything. But of course, then there are also students who just write an X in the recap and said, I've done it, so to say. And to be a little bit more safe on that side, we also do some checks, so to say, of the things. Not of everything, but from time to time, we can check what students have done.
That's great. Thank you, Bjorn.
Thank you, gents. We do have some questions coming on the Q&A. Now, one of them does actually relate to a question I asked before, but I just want to expand a little bit on it if I can, Paul. So Helen's asked, is there a plan, or would it be possible for Slooh to follow global curriculums? Now, you've addressed that a little bit, but there's a bit more context to the question. And that's that the person wanted to use Slooh for their classroom in New Zealand, but there was a lot of learning quests for them to filter through and to find activities that were relevant to their course. So how could you best go about doing that with Slooh for the curriculum in New Zealand?
We do have some tables which show the standards alignments and different curricular alignments around the world. And what some educators and countries with slightly different curriculum have been using that table, and it's been fairly easy to look at the standards alignments and the curricular topics and then map it to their own curricula. We also, in that huge table, have got the associated chapters of the OpenStax astronomy textbook, and if educators out there haven't actually come across that, it's an absolutely marvelous resource. So it's OpenStax, STAX, and you can see the chapter from the OpenStax astronomy course and how that relates to each one of these quests. But also, I think because of, and Bjorn maybe can add to this, because of how astronomy is as a topic, there are always key areas of the curriculum which are identical, no matter where you are, whether or not it's IB or whether or not it's Texas standards or anywhere else. Bjorn, I don't know if you can expand on that at all.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I mean, what I found personally quite helpful was the table you just mentioned. That I don't know if it's available on the webpage, but you just sent me this table some weeks ago or some months ago. And especially, I can also just say this OpenStax resource is really, really useful, especially as you can easily provide it to every student for free. So that's quite a nice thing. So now I think I forgot your last part. I mean, yeah. So what I also realized with the quizzes is that there are some quizzes on the same topic but on different levels, which
Yeah.
is also quite helpful. But I think there's what you definitely need to do at least at once is to go through the list of quizzes and to see if they fit to your curriculum. Because there are
Yeah.
so many individual curricula, especially, I mean, I also think that even in the lectures, the curricula might be a little bit different. At least in Germany, this is the case. So
Yeah, so I did show this a short while ago. I showed us learning progressions, but these are all of our quests. So a great way of actually picking out quests that would service a particular curriculum would be going through using the filters here. These are our learning progressions, which are based on grade level. And what that does is it produces a list of quests in the order that we would recommend. And actually, what we're finding is these learning progressions normally fit, 70, 80% of whatever astronomy curriculum is around the world, because it always comes back to those basic bits of astronomy, studying the solar system, studying, planetary nebulae with, those Kepler's planetary missions, doing a bit of discovery by Clyde Tombaugh, looking at the life and death of stars, looking at how big the universe is, looking at celestial distances. All of these things tend to crop up in most astronomy curricula. So, Glenn.
Brilliant. We've got one final question for yourselves, Bjorn and Paul, that we'll get to. But there is a question I'll just address. We've had a couple of questions over subscriptions. So one of those questions was, is this pay to view? So short answer is no. That may be something that people are familiar with Slooh being, and there are obviously pay per view services out there. It's a subscription model. Typically works on a 12-month basis, which links directly to another question that we've had over shorter time periods. As standard, those subscriptions are 12 months, but please talk to us. And so for anyone who's asked about that, we'll reach out, and you'll find us able to work within your requirements. So we'll talk about that directly with anyone who's asked. But that final question for Bjorn and Paul today. So we've spoken in depth about how various students are using Slooh. And I think people have got an understanding of how undergrad students are using Slooh, and to some extent also for high school students as well. So it's kind of a twofold question, this, and that is, so how are non-astronomy students using Slooh, and also how are postgrad students able to use Slooh? So what kind of features are there for postgrads? So I think it's sort of out of those confines of sort of the high school undergrad, sort of how are others using it, or how are outside of the confines, should I say, of astronomy students at high school and undergrad, how are they benefiting?
Straight over to you, Bjorn, I think, because you're dealing with school students as well as your PhD students as well using the platform.
Yeah, I mean, the let's say non-physics students or undergrad students from other faculties, they are really, I mean, for them it's a really good opener for astronomy, because it's so easy. You can use it to take pictures. They can take the pictures that they like, or do observations that they like, and especially these it might sound a bit strange, but the, let's say, non-physical students very often start with the elementary school quizzes. And even if you go there and read it, there are, from time to time, there are even things where you think, oh, yes, so maybe I also forgot about this or that or whatever. And then the postgrad students, again, that is how Slooh is integrated in our working group, I would say. It's a kind of tool. As soon as you want to observe something, if there's something interesting, you can directly go there and take a measurement, so to say. And you do not have to wait for good weather. So, for example, when there are, from time to time, we join the campaigns of the AAVSO, so this American Association of Variable Star Observers. So we have there some codes. And from time to time, they ask for observing an object and seeing whether it changes the brightness or whatever. So to trigger then some other observations. So this is quite easy to be done by Slooh. So
Yeah,
there are many ways where it's just used just in between, as it would be a really, really important tool, which is it's just there, so you can use it as your telescope.
I think the only thing that I would add to that is any subscription level, it doesn't matter whether you're elementary school or university PhD student, any student member of Slooh has access to all of the telescopes and all of the Quest learning activities, no matter what level. And what we do find is, even at university level, depending on the demographic of that student body and the curricula and the pre-existing knowledge of those students coming in, sometimes you've got a university professor who is actually assigning even middle school quests or high school quests, but equally we do have middle school and high school users who are actually assigning some of our advanced higher ed quests. But the point is, students have access to all of them. So just as we see with the University of Oldenburg students, they're doing some, but actually they're doing way more quests that they've either been assigned or require to get those 3,000 gravity points. And I think that is a great illustration of the level of engagement that this platform is building, especially around the gamification as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, gentlemen. So I think we're at time. You can see my colleague Jimmy on the screen, and obviously I've been speaking quite a fair bit today. My name's Glenn, and we're the partnerships directors for this side of the world, for APAC, Middle East, or EMEA. So please do reach out if you have any questions. And yeah, as I mentioned, for those who have asked any questions about subscriptions, we'll reach out and give some more information through that channel as well. You can reach us by email or through WhatsApp, whichever you prefer. And obviously, several times Paul's mentioned resources on the website. You can see that right in front of you there, slooh.com. So feel free to check that out as well. But thanks to everyone today who has joined us. Huge thanks to Dr. Poppe and to Paul for speaking with us today. And we hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Professor.
Bye-bye.